Hello and welcome to the Fish House Nation podcast. Today, our guest is Dale Luginbill from Full Scale Outdoors and the Full Scale Outdoors podcast. Dale, welcome to the Fish House Nation.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Dale, first off, what is Full Scale Outdoors?
Holy smokes, that's a kind of a big question. Full Scale Outdoors, in its inception, and it's still my main goal, is kind of an all outdoors guide service. So, fishing, hunting, and foraging. I know that's foraging is kind of the I don't know what would be the right word, but not a lot of people do it. There's more and more interest every year into going out and procuring your own wild foods, especially for people that may not be so warm to hunting, but they still want to get out there. Maybe they're vegetarian or not. They just aren't keen on killing things. Then foraging, it always starts like I always joke that morel mushroom is like the gateway drug to foraging because it's the one everybody knows. So it's relatively safe. There's not too many, the only real lookalike is the false mushroom. And that's a contested debate whether or not they're actually bad for you or not. Some people purposely eat them and some people tell you to avoid them at all costs. So you're not going to die if you eat the wrong one that looks like, or get real sick. So that's always the gateway drug. It was for me. That's kind of how I got started in it. And then I think I saw an article in the outdoor news about chanterelle mushrooms. And I was like, wait, what? There's a different kind of mushroom you can eat? And then when I looked at the pictures, I'm like, I know where a patch of those are right now. And I went out and checked them out, and sure enough, and then that just opened the whole door. And then I started looking into wild greens, and it just went from there. So I kind of encapsulated that with the fishing and hunting guiding as kind of an all outdoors thing. I'd been toying with the idea of starting a podcast for forever. And then a little over 2 years ago, finally just said, screw it, I'm going to do it. I hadn't any guests lined up or anything. It was first episode is just me rambling about what we're talking about right here. What is Full Scale? How did I get to this point? And that's kind of it. So if people want to check out the podcast, go to episode 1 and you can listen to me ramble on aimlessly.
I want to get to that podcast here eventually, but first of all, tell me a little bit about the area that you're guiding in.
I'm guiding in the North Metro, I guess it would be called. So anyway, from let's see, what's like the Big Marine, that area, kind of to the south end, and then all the way up into Pine City, Hinckley area. I got some lakes in there, and I've guided on Mille Lacs in the past too for walleyes. But right now, my main focus is mostly panfish, and then I can throw pike in there if people are interested. And it's always nice to have a tip up out. Kind of breaks up the day, sprinting after a flag. Who doesn't like that? That's pretty fun. But panfish is kind of the specialty. And there are good panfish to have in the North Metro area. And a lot of these lakes are really pressured, but you just got to know where to go and how to fish for them. So
Sure. What went into the decision for you to kind of start guiding? Obviously, I'm guessing you've been an angler for a long time. What kind of goes into that decision? Says I want to start taking people out and doing it for money. I mean, it's one thing taking your buddy out. There's not a lot of pressure, but you start doing it for money, then that whole pressure thing, I think, starts coming up.
well, one is having a job you don't like. That helps. So I was an iron worker by trade. I shouldn't say I actually didn't mind iron work. It's a really good career. It's a dangerous career. It's very taxing on you physically. And I started and I've been doing it for almost 20 years. And I'm watching these guys, that were in it when I was an apprentice, and they're getting old and they're retiring. And it's like when they retire, they don't have much physicality left to enjoy their life. They spent it all just busting their ass building stuff. And I just looked at that and said, that isn't something I wanted to do. I don't really want to retire like that. I want to, if I'm going to retire, I want to be able to have some physicality left. So that, coupled with pretty much my whole life, my brother has been on my ass about being a guide. He's like, you should guide, you should guide, you should guide. And it was always like my self-doubt, like, well, who am I? Who am I to teach someone how to fish, or who am I to show somebody else, as I'm looking up to established guides and, personalities you see in magazines or on TV, it's like, oh my God, I'm not Al Linder. Who the heck am I, But then I started noticing, like, I am guiding my family. I am guiding my friends, and I'm having friends of friends. And even within like the ironworker, it's like, hey, I've always been interested in doing that. I'm like, well, I'll take you out, I'll teach you some things. And then kind of started to realize, have some self-awareness, like, hey, I actually know what I'm doing here. Like this is, I would like to think better than your average angler, Um, so I have things to teach, and I love teaching. So then once I started to do it, it was like the first time I ever guided somebody, that was it. It's like I love people. I love meeting new people, finding out where they come from, having conversations, and then you throw the teaching element in on it, and then it works, and then you see their excitement and they're so happy. It's like you can't beat this. Like this is what I need to be doing. And ironically enough, my first guiding wasn't fishing guiding; it was hunting. It was snow goose guiding, hunting for spring snows in South Dakota, and it was like that was it. I mean, took my first group of clients out. I was working while I still work for Premier Flight, um, and it like that was it. Man, that's just where I knew. And if anything, I was kicking myself like, dang, I should have started this 20 years ago. I should when I was getting into ironwork, I should have been doing this instead, But call it a midlife crisis, whatever you want. I decided like, hey, life's too short. Let's get this ball rolling, and I'm have no regrets.
What's kind of the most difficult part of that job?
The most difficult part of that job, I would say, is your self expectation. Is the pressure I put on myself to make sure that I have a good lake lined up, I have a good bite lined up, and we go there and we're going to catch fish. That my biggest fear is going out there and having a bad day, and like, and I just, or even hunting, like I hate that. Well, I guess they're just not biting today. Well, I'm not okay with that, and I've never been okay with that, which is one of the reasons. Like I've always pushed myself to be a better angler, to think outside the box, fish where other people aren't fishing, and that led me then down the road to the tournament league, which I don't want to go off on a tangent with that, but so that like I place a lot of pressure on myself, and you can be on these Facebook threads and stuff where people are kind of bashing guides, and if they had a bad experience and whatever else. And I promise you, there might be some fly by night guide services out there, but the vast majority of guides out there want the clients to have the best day they can possibly have. What's in it for them to just be out there and be bored all day? Like that's not, nobody wants that. They don't, I guarantee you the guide doesn't want that. So, I mean, that's my biggest challenge is just the pressure that I put in on myself. And that just drives me to do my due diligence and make sure that when we go out, that we have a good day. And with that said, there are some things that are outside your control. There are weather and different factors, and you have to make game time decisions and whatever. But if the ice is bad, the lake you're planning going, maybe slush developed, or there's a big ice eve and you can't access a landing. I mean, there's a multitude of different things, and all of a sudden you're like, well, crap, I got to go to this other lake now, and I've had these guys booked for 2 months. Got to make it work. So, I mean, there are some times, those are rare, but it does happen. I mean, I had some people out 2 weekends ago. Actually, it was on a Monday, and had a private lake all lined up, and we went to the private lake. Everything was great. Ice was great. But man, I don't know what happened to that lake, the size structure of the fish. I mean, that lake used to have just giants in it. It was 14s. You just catch piles of 14-inch crappies out there. We couldn't hardly find one that hit 11, and the bite was tough. I was like, you know what, guys, we can stay out here and hope um, the bite picks up as it gets later in the day, or we can just make a total lake change. There's a lake nearby here. Got some spots on it. We do really well. And the clients are like, yeah, let's do it. Let's bounce. So we packed up, and it was about a little over an hour from lines up to lines in. And that was a great decision. We ended up catching not only bigger fish, but numbers were fine too. And then we got that kind of little magic half bar window, but they just started snapping. And that was a ton of fun. And then I mean, they were having a good time anyways. It was great conversation. And then you add in a great hot bite to finish the day out strong, and everybody's leaving with smiles, and that's just the best. That's the best part right there. I love it.
Very cool. Tell me a little bit about a day on the water with you. If I were to hire you, what would my day be like? What was it like going out with Dale Luginbill?
Well, hopefully you'll laugh a lot. I don't take too many things too serious. I mean, I take my job serious, but outside of that, um, it'll probably start off a little slow. Like I'm going to get to know you personally. I mean, it's going to start off slow. I'll be kind of professional at first, kind of feel you out, see what kind of jokes I can get away with, and then from there, once I kind of gauge your personality and I know where the sweet spot lies, I'm going to exploit that, and we're going to have a lot of fun. And I'm gonna ask you a ton of questions. I really want to get to know you because that's what I'm interested in. I like getting to know the people, like I really do. And for the most part, most people I've guided so far, I've left either the field or the lake or the woods that day with a friend, and I stay in contact with them as much as they can stay in contact with me. I'm busy, and it's not so much me reaching out to them, but if you reach out to me, I'm gonna respond. I'm gonna say, "Hey, what's up? I was, that," and it's not me. That's not me trying to be a businessman or anything. That's just like we made that connection, And I think the great outdoors for all of us, that's the camaraderie that you get from that. I mean, it's a bond. You're sharing this in the wilds, kind of a primal thing that I think we're all tethered to at some level, genetic level, and I don't know, I just love it.
Tell me about your podcast, the Full Scale Outdoor Podcast. What's
So the podcast,
I know
sorry,
people here are used to my show, but I think yours is a little bit different. So tell me about your show.
mine's a lot different, and not necessarily in a good way. It just is. I went into the podcast thinking, the outdoor industry has kind of had this squeaky clean like image. If you wanted to be in the industry, you had to be straight laced and don't use language in this. And I'm not saying that I'm like the Howard Stern or anything like that. I don't try to be outrageous. But what I wanted was, and this was for me listening to other outdoor podcasts and just feeling like there was a void here. Like it was too regimented, too kind of planned. And I wanted something a little more loose. That was just more conversation. So it was like, it was the times that I would spend in the boat with my buddies or in the fish house or in the goose blind, and we're just all laughing at each other, ripping on each other, telling some off-color jokes, and everybody's just having a great time. And I'm like, this should be a show, and I was like, that's what I'm just going to do. I'm going to have people on that interest me, that I like, and we're just going to talk. And whatever, if it ends up being a serious conversation about tactics and tricks and tips, then great. But if it just turns into we're hacking on each other over a couple beers and telling stories, and then that's just as good too. So I keep it real loose. I don't really ever go into any of my shows with like a plan. Um, and if anybody has listened to my show, I do a segment every once in a while called a Flight Companion, and which is a blatant ripoff of Joe Rogan's Fight Companion, where he gets together with his buddies and they watch UFC fights, and they all, it's mostly garbage. Like they do that exact same. They joke and they rip on each other and they go off on tangents about aliens or this, that, who knows what else. And then every now and again they talk about fights. Well, that's what my Flight Companions are. I'll have 4 people, it'll be me and 3 other people. Each person will bring a different beer for everybody to test out. And then, we'll drink and we'll give our honest opinions on those beers. And then in between that, a lot of times we're talking about fishing and hunting. A lot of times we're talking about just complete nonsense, but it's a lot of fun. It's kind of like it's a deviation from even my usual not very topic oriented shows. So I just let that one completely go off the rails, but it's a lot of fun. I've got pretty good feedback on it. So I've always just thought, hey, I'm my own boss. I'm going to do this for my own enjoyment. If it takes off, it takes off. If it doesn't, it's just as good. I mean, I had a background in broadcasting. I went to school in Minneapolis at Brown for broadcasting. I was in small market radio for a little bit. Had a family. My daughter was born. Just you make no money in small market radio. I just couldn't do it, so I had to get a real job. That's what brought me to Ironwork, and then come full circle to here. I just always wanted to do the broadcast thing, and then once podcast became a thing, I was like, well, heck, I'm already trained to do it. Might as well do it. It costs relatively little to do. So here we are 2 years, 2 years plus later, creeping up on 150 episodes.
What's your best advice to someone who wants to start a fishing podcast?
One, I would say just do it. That might sound really simple. Like you can literally just put a phone on your table, press voice memo and start recording. You don't have to have these headphones and this mixing board. It's what have a clear vision of what you want it to be. If you want it to be a more produced, tactics, tips kind of a thing, make it that. If you want it just to be the conversations of you and your buddies, make it that. Don't get hung up on like audio quality right out of the gate. Just do it. And here's a good tip. Just because you record something doesn't mean you have to release it. I think a lot of people go into it with like they're afraid to hit that record button. They're not sure what they're going to talk about, or they have all these questions. Well, the best way to work out those kinks is to just do it. And if it's a complete dumpster fire, just hit delete and do it again. And then, I would say as awkward as it might have been, go back and listen to it. It's the best way you're going to have okay, I didn't like that. Oh, I can't say that. When I first started, I had a ton of little crutch words and phrases that I was using. When I would listen back to my early podcasts, it was just like, oh God, oh, I said it again. Oh, I said it again. God, I have got to stop doing that. And the only way I would have known that is by listening to it. Or if somebody would have messaged me like, hey dude, stop saying like so much, or whatever the thing might have been. But it's just what you want it to be. Not so much a tip, but like we're in an era now where podcasts have really taken off. There's new ones starting all the time. We're kind of where YouTube was like 10 years ago, maybe a little more than 10 years ago. There's definitely space for more, but find some kind of a niche. How are you going to separate yourself from the pack to get noticed? You know, do you know more than other people? Because that's a thing. I mean, if you're just super knowledgeable about, whatever, that's a thing. Do you have a good sense of humor? Do just find some sort of angle. But with that said, don't let that keep you from starting it if you can't figure out what that is. That's something that can evolve as you do it. Get it rolling, just start doing it, get those reps in, and then these things kind of start taking a life of their own. And you can steer it if you want, or you can kind of just let it grow organically. I hate that word, but there's some truth to it. So the biggest tip is to just do it. I mean, the hardest part, and it was for me, is just the doubt, I need this board and I need this microphone and I need this. Just do it. Just literally just start doing it. You have no reason not to do it. It's super simple. There's a ton of YouTube videos out there on how to do it, how to post them, where to post them. There's articles everywhere. You have all the answers at your fingertips in that Google bar. Just utilize it and eliminate the excuses that you keep telling yourself to not do it, and just start it.
Your Google is not broken. Use it.
Yeah, just use it. Or use
It's
Yahoo. I don't care. It doesn't have to be. This isn't a Google commercial. Use whatever search engine you want. The information is out there.
it's a new year this year. Do you have any fishing related goals?
Fishing related goals. Well, we have our first Minnesota made outdoors tournament event this Sunday. And we have some new teams. We got some heavy hitters this year. Plus, we're just watching other teams improve year in and year out. Joel and I were fortunate enough to finish second place overall last year, which gets you nothing, by the way. But it's just, second out of 25 teams, you get some bragging rights there. And we did win. We got our first plaque. That's Clearwater up there in the corner, if anybody can see that. That was, we were really proud of that. I mean, getting a check or getting some prizes off the table, for finishing top 10 is great and all, but that plaque, that hardware on the wall is what everybody really wants in the long run. So my goals this year is to win at least one lake and remain in the top 5. and we've expanded the league to 30 teams this year, so it's going to be harder than ever. There's definitely no guarantees that we will finish in that top 5. We could easily fall out of the top 20. I mean, there's the quality of anglers we have in the league right now are that good that you can't take anything for granted. So put in the time and effort of scouting and pre-fishing and fish the best we can come game day and see what happens. But between doing well in the tournament league and just keep growing the guide business, I would say those are my winter goals.
I've had Gazzoni on a couple times on the show, talking some Minnesota made. How'd you get involved in that? How'd you get started doing that stuff?
Giz is great. I love that dude. It really came down to, so early on when I said, I'm really hard on myself about wanting to do better on the ice than the next guy, and that drove me to think outside the box. And it got to a point where we kind of tournament fish without a tournament. We're drilling a ton of holes, we're trying different techniques, and we really got a kick out of leaving the lake at least thinking that we probably did better than 98% of the anglers on that any given lake, any given weekend. And then a buddy of mine, who's a fellow iron worker, knows Giz. I think they went to school together or something, and he was always on me of like, oh, you gotta check out my buddies. I got this whole thing, this Minnesota made tournament league or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I'll check them out. And I was just getting full scale going, so I was pretty preoccupied. And then I finally looked into it, and then I saw the league and what it was. And then so I friended them on Facebook and joined the group, and then they announced they had some openings for a team. So I went to my buddy Joel. I'm like, we should do this. And we pretty much already tournament fish anyways. What do we got to lose? Let's see where we actually stack up, And took a little bit of convincing, but he did it. Now I think he's more rabid about it than I am, and I'm pretty rabid about it. So we make for a pretty good team that way. And that's kind of how it started. I mean, just jumped in with both feet, and we're off to the races. Didn't look back.
Tell me a little bit about that. That's not, the tournament day is on Saturday or Sunday. You don't just show up on tournament day and fish. What's involved in being a successful tournament angler?
As much time as your life allows you to be on that lake up until tournament day. And a lot of that time we've utilized underwater cameras. That's a huge tool where you're not even fishing. You're just drilling holes and you're looking around. A lot of these lakes, on lakes where you can, the UPL is on Pokegama this weekend. Now that lake, you have to actually pre-fish because that water's dark. There's no like shallow weed bite. There's hardly any weeds on that lake. So camera would do you zero good. But on a lot of these lakes, the one we have coming up, Maple, there is a shallow bite. There is a basin bite too, but the water's clean. So you're using your camera. You're just drilling a ton of holes. You're basically scuba diving without getting wet. You're trying to learn as much of the bottom of that lake as you can. And you're seeing the fish that you want, and you're picking out, when you find fish, better quality fish that you want, it's gathering as much information as you can. Where are they? The depth? Are they in weeds? What kind of weeds are they? Are you seeing, does that matter? You're like, well, they were in cabbage here, but we saw them in coontail over there, but more times than not, they're relating to a certain type of weeds in a certain depth range. And then you can take that information and you can just pattern that. You can look on your lake map and go, okay, well, they should be here if they were here, and they should be there. And then you go run and you drill some holes and you check that out. And then there's some size checking, we call it, where you actually do fish and see what the quality of fish you get. But if I'm being brutally honest, when I want a size check, I'm just getting really tired of looking at my camera and I want to fish. So, if I'm being honest, but it's just really breaking down water, and it's the elimination of water too is another important aspect. It's not always where are the fish, is where aren't the fish. So when you're just as much as it's important, when I drill a hole and I see fish and I see weeds or I see whatever, then I'm like, okay, make a mental note of that. Was when I drill a hole and I don't see fish, what am I seeing? Because now when I take that information to another part of the lake, I drill a hole, I don't know what's down there. I drop my camera and I see dead weeds, or I see sand instead of muck, or whatever the information is that I've gathered. I know now I can make some broader brushed decisions, and I really start trimming that lake down into bite-sized pieces. And that's where it's coming down to. You want to plan A, B, all the way through Z, because it doesn't matter what you did the day before. It can all change the next day, and I've seen it change. And so you have as many different spots and scenarios as you can put together, the better off you're going to be. I think if people were to keep a detailed log of their scouting log, like log their time on the lake, and then you went back in the Minnesota Made archives and you saw who placed what and where, you would see a direct correlation with time spent scouting and pre-fishing to success. I think most everybody in the league is a good angler. It's who can really dial that lake in when it, come game day.
That's very cool. Dale, I had you on. It was really open ended. We were going to talk about a lot of different things, but is there something that you wanted to talk about today that I didn't ask you about?
I don't think so. I think we covered it. Right now my main focus is the tournament league. I'm jacked up. It's just days away. I mean, it's sleepless nights already. I just get so jacked up for these things. It's silly. I get there's people have probably seen the meme, but there's a meme with Matthew McConaughey, and I've seen it in bass leagues and ice fishing. It can be for anything, but it's always like, the hour before the event, and he's all jacked up. An hour into it, he's super laser focused. Halfway through the day, he's freaking out, and then of course he's just completely, he's done. He's basically looking homeless in the last frame. It's just, and it's so legit. Like that is my. I'm super amped up to start. I'm laser focused at first. Come middle of the day, I'm like, this bag isn't going to cut it. We're getting our butts kicked. What are we going to do? It's crunch time. I'm freaking out. And then we go to weigh in, and people think I sandbag, and I don't sandbag. Like when I go to the scales, more times than not, I legitimately don't think I did very good, because I know the field of anglers that I have in front of me, and I know what the lake is capable of, and I don't think my bucket it has what the lake is capable of in it. And so I'm like kicking rocks, and I'm all down, and then you put your fish on a scale, and sometimes you go, oh, a little better than I thought. And then you see other people's weights come in. You're like, hey, we might not actually have done that bad. And then, sometimes you do good, and sometimes you don't do as good. And then every now and again, you get real lucky and you win. So you got to just make your plan, fish your strategy, fish clean. I like to say, don't dump break lines, dumping fish, control the things you can control. I think Ike Anelli said it best. He's like, there is luck involved at times, but you have to put yourself into position to be lucky. So you do the things you can control. The fish, they'll do what they're going to do.
Very good. I think that works in all aspects of life. Put yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Dale, if people want to find out more about you and what you're up to, where can they find you?
Find me pretty much anywhere. Facebook. I think I have a little bit of room on the friends thing on my personal page at Dale Luginbill. Otherwise, Full Scale Outdoors has a Facebook page. There's a Full Scale Outdoors group, which who doesn't have their own outdoor group page? Join it. Whatever. It's pretty small, but you can whatever. I don't really have much for rules on there. If you're a tackle maker, or you have a resort, or whatever your thing is, feel free to go on there and spam it and post links, whatever you want to do. I'm totally okay with that. Instagram, fullscale_outdoors. I'm on Snapchat. My Snapchat, I do a lot of stuff like as I'm doing the event that I don't post on other stuff too. So people kind of want to follow along in real time. Snapchat's a good place to do that. Yeah, those are the main ones. I mean, I'm LinkedIn. I think I have a TikTok. I don't ever use it, but I'm too old for TikTok. I think. I don't know. I just don't have time. It's a fun. I mean, I can get lost in it myself if I allow myself, but I don't have time to make the videos and do the things. So yeah, I think
There's so many cool
I have a
things to do
YouTube
out
channel
there.
too that I don't use. So
Well, we'll look for you in all those places. Thanks so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it, and good luck this year hitting those goals, and good luck on the tournament trail.
Thank you. Appreciate it.